Everybody shout hallelujah.
Enoch is about the life of Pastor EA Adeboye. He's a giant of the faith, a living legend. What's even better is that Daddy Joe himself actually sat in on this. So like he watched the movie twice, actually 3 times according to Joshua, my family, and was able to give feedback on the accuracy of story. So it actually is his life, and they got him to have increase in it. If you are a fan of old school romance, the intentionality, the chase, you're going to also love the love story of Daddy Gio and Mama Folu that was depicted in this movie. So good. I love that they were able to humanize them in that, and I mean the intentionality though. And you could see that, like, even though he was a ladies' man, ladies were always around him. When he was ready to go after Mama Folu, he ditched all the other women and like squared his mind on pursuing this one woman. And ladies and gentlemen of the 21st century, this is something to also highlight. The fact that you have so many people that are attracted to you doesn't mean that you should be pursuing them all simultaneously. Focus, my people. And that part is my relationship side coming out. If you want to see more of that kind of content, please subscribe to this channel. One thing that surprised me was that Daddy Gio did not immediately jump into the call for ministry. I just, seeing him now as a giant of faith, I just imagined that he was always like, yes, Lord, whatever you say, I'll do your will. But he was actually fighting, becoming a believer, becoming a pastor, and then like even yielding this call was not like an easy journey for him at all. And that was really helpful in, again, reminding us that God's generals sometimes have grown into those positions. On the relationship front, I'm always saying to people that your partner might need time to grow into the excellent husbands you've seen, the excellent wives you've seen that maybe your mother was or your father was or your mentors are, because it takes time for your character to be refined and for God to walk through you and with you. The person that you are in 40 years after 40 years of marriage is not who you were on the day you got married. So like essentially we need time to grow. And it's interesting to see that the same thing can also apply in the spiritual angle. While God can pour his spirit upon a person on the day they become a believer and they are doing exploits greater than people that have been believers for years, sometimes it's also a gradual process of walking with God and growing in confidence, growing in trust. And you can kind of see that because these days the confidence he exudes about the things of God is like a different level. And this is the only part of him I've ever known. Like, I was not born back then in the beginning of his days, but stories like this help us see that even giants of faith grew to be giants of faith. So you can continue to walk closer with God, and maybe in 40 years this will be your life. This movie is excellent in that it tried to bring the 70s and 80s alive, and I saw some of the behind the scenes work on John Oguntoashi's channel, how like sometimes they'll be filming and they'll realize that something modern is in the background that was not available back in the 80s or 70s. And that kind of intentionality is what really makes the story come alive. It feels believable. They really did film in Modakeke and I think Elisha as well, and it takes a lot of energy and work. They had a cast of like 300 people apparently and a crew of 70-ish people. That is a massive effort. Honestly, shout out to the people, the Christians that are doing the work, Christian creatives. Sometimes pastors get a lot of the recognition, but Christian creatives are also doing amazing work. And even though they're not necessarily on a pulpit preaching the gospel, this work travels far. Today is 9 days since the release of the movie, and 1.4 million people have seen it. That is an immense, massive number. And so just shout out to all the Christian creatives out there doing the Lord's work. You all should support them with your funds. If you can give to those ministries, definitely do, because they are doing the Lord's work. Another thing I saw, was the drama behind him becoming the successor to Kindayomi. You can imagine having all these pastors that have served under someone for so long, and then the person is about to pass away and everybody knows they're going to pick a successor, and you assume that it's someone that has been faithful over the years. And this young guy that became a believer only recently, essentially a younger believer, is the one who is chosen. And the human side of people came up, and then there was some opposition essentially. And I can imagine that the part of the movie that got cut, because this movie apparently went from being an almost 5-hour movie to now being a 2.5-hour-ish movie, that there were some parts that might have been cut about even how further opposition came in ministry. Because the ministry of Rccg, the goal is really to have to multiply rapidly. that comes with its own issues, because there might be infighting, there might be, disagreements about who should be the one starting a new church, stuff like that. And I'm sure that even people that have been raised within the ministry might have, they might not have always seen eye to eye, essentially. So I thought it was really insightful to see that despite all the challenges that must have happened in this past 50-ish years of ministry, he's still standing, and it's just worthy of emulation. The fact that he's been with God for so long and is so humble also reminds me that no matter what you're achieving, like, keep your head down. It's God that has taken you wherever you are. When it comes to the acting, it was good, but not great in my opinion. And I don't know enough to really give like the most informed perspective, but hear me out. I've watched a lot of movies, a lot of Mount Zion movies as well, and I feel like I've just seen more compelling stuff from them. I don't know if that's because there had to be some reshoots after the movie was initially shot, and then when you have to summarize a longer story into a shorter piece, I imagine that they've had to take out parts of the story, and it's just harder to make it all work together again. But it was good enough. It still passed on the message. There were still chills in some part of it. And I cannot talk about this movie without talking about the Dide soundtrack. I love it so much, and I wish it was incorporated into more parts of the movie. It was very clear at the end, and I keep playing that end part more. I love the Dide, Christian Dide. It's a call for Christians to rise up to the call. Essentially, there are no spectators in the kingdom. All of us are supposed to be actively going out to preach the gospel, actively discipling people, actively praying for people, actively using our gifts and talents to serve. And movies like this, they do that. They wake something up inside of you to step out in your own calling. So I really love that soundtrack, and I really hope that the Mount Zion music team would release that as something that you can listen to by itself. Kudos to the music from Mount Zion so far. I remember the train as well. The soundtrack was just so beautiful. The soundtrack from Adeboye as well. Excellent soundtracks that you can listen to themselves, and just reminds you that when you're doing things for God, everything, the makeup or the clothing, the music, the acting, is all for the glory of God, and nothing is too small for God to use. So even your skills and talents, you should be thinking about, God, how can you use it? This YouTube video that I'm doing the review, my God, use it as well to inspire people to come to the kingdom. Everything is an instrument that God can use. The music was excellent. The acting was good enough, but I've seen better. Should you watch Enoch? Absolutely. This story is beautiful, and stories are so powerful in that they help us to connect deeper with people. All of a sudden now, I'm appreciating the part that Mommy Gio, Mrs. Folu Adeboye, played in the life of Daddy Gio, because all the support, all the encouragement, all the carrying the burden of taking care of kids for the most part, because he was so busy doing ministry. I feel connected towards her story even more. But I'm also inspired to act. Seeing his journey of faith, seeing the things he overcame, seeing what God has done with his life now, and knowing how far he has come, and also seeing this humble beginning is inspiring me to action. There is no life that God cannot use. And seeing how unqualified he felt is also very inspiring for me, because when you know that you're unqualified, you have to lean on God even more, because you know that you can't do it in your own strength. And I think that's my big takeaway from this movie, that God can use any one of us, and he's able to equip us for the journey that we have to go on. Enoch is excellent. Kudos to everyone who made this story come alive. You should go watch it if you haven't watched it. And you know what you should do? Take it a step further when you watch it and share it with people that because it will bless their lives. The story is so well done, and you can pass it on to someone else, and maybe this will be the way they come to know Christ. Now, one action point for you as well: support Christian creatives. I imagine that it's a lot of work, so if you can donate, do that. And from me, if you enjoyed this video so far, please subscribe. It's free. Just hit the subscribe button and like it. It helps the algorithm show this to more people, and that's a way to get the story out some more. Until then, pray for your pastor. The burden is heavy, and support Christian creatives, and whatever God has given you as a talent, use it to bring him glory. If you don't feel qualified, that's okay, because it means you will have to lean on God. It will force you to lean on God. And there is no better place to be than leaning on God, resting on God, asking God for strength, relying on God for strength, because he can't fail you. So lean on God and step out in faith with whatever He has called you to do.